Greetings. My name is Reverend Pamela Watt, and I am the minister of First Unitarian Church of Wilmington, Delaware. And on behalf of the family of Marge Meyermann, I welcome you to this sacred time when we honor the life of someone who meant so much to us. Today we hold out the stories of Marge, who she was, what she meant to us, how we were touched by her kindness and her leadership. We take time to get in touch with our emotions. We let ourselves feel something of the loss. And we begin to let go of someone whose presence in the world made such a huge difference. In usual circumstances, we'd all be packed in this sanctuary with tissues in hand. After the service, we would greet the family and offer condolences. We'd have punch and cookies, and we'd laugh as we recalled the times that Marge's humor broke through. Or we'd smile, remembering all the times that her fierce energy was at work for the greater good. We'd marvel at Marge's life, and we'd grieve together that even with her 96 years of robust living, we all wish we could have just another year with her. But these aren't usual circumstances. Marge's family has been feeling that all too well. When Marge was going on to hospice care back in early March, it became clear that she wouldn't be around much longer. Julie had come in from Michigan, and Marnie traveled here from California. They lived together in Marge's house, and with Janet, took care of whatever needed taking care. They said goodbyes, and these three dutiful daughters helped Marge die well. Since then, they have been frantically trying to take care of the house and nearly 50 years of settled contents in that house, while also dealing with the constraints of the pandemic and closed businesses that makes the whole process a lot harder. My heart is with Marge's children and their spouses as they try to figure out all of these pieces. We all know this journey would be painful enough under normal circumstances. Today, many of you gather on Zoom, where we are streaming this service. If you would like to later view the service, you're welcome to do so on our First Unitarian Church YouTube channel, where you'll be able to access a higher quality of the recording than Zoom allows. But the reason that we've gathered you here on Zoom is that it offers us the ability for those closest to Marge to know that they are held in a community of support, even if in virtual space, and also for us to see one another and to know that we are in good company as we hold out our memories and grieve the loss of this important person in our lives. As we prepare for the work of remembrance, we begin with a song that was part of Hank's memorial service back in 2006, and we are joined by Martin Hargrove singing. As Unitarian Universalists, we often light a chalice as we gather. It's a symbol of our faith, reminding us who and what we love, and who and what we wish to be in this world. As we light our chalice today, I share with you these chalice lighting words written by one of my favorite Unitarian Universalist leaders, Marjorie Meyermann. I light this chalice in remembrance of those who are not with us, in gratitude for our blessings, in appreciation of our shared values, in love and hope, asking for strength in the days ahead. May we be kind. May we give and receive love. The opening hymn is one that Marge and Hank both loved. It was their choice for the opening hymn in Hank's memorial service in 2006, and Marge asked that we also sing it this day. You are invited to join me in singing the first hymn in our hymnal, number 1, May Nothing Evil Cross This Door, as we are led by our First Unitarian Church Choir.
With laughter dry.
The last time I saw Marge, she spoke of two people in particular who were on her mind and heart: her beloved late husband, Hank, and her beloved granddaughter, Allison, who died in 1993. In some way, it felt like she was still trying to make some kind of peace at the deep loss in the family of losing Allison at such a young age. This poem has special meaning for Marge and for the family and was read at Allison's graveside service. In Blackwater Woods by Mary Oliver. Look, the trees are turning their own bodies into pillars of light, are giving off the rich fragrance of cinnamon and fulfillment. The long tapers of cattails are bursting and floating away over the blue shoulders of the ponds. And every pond, no matter what its name is nameless now. Every year, everything I have ever learned in my lifetime leads back to this. The fires and the black river of loss, whose other side is salvation, whose meaning none of us will ever know. To live in this world, you must be able to do three things: to love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing that your own life depends on it, and when the time comes, to let it go. Let it go. A day after Christmas, in 1923, Marjorie Colton was born in a small town in northern Illinois. The second of three children born to Myrtle Colton. She completed high school at age 16. She liked to say she was valedictorian of her class. Of course, there were only 11 students. Though poor, Marge's family valued education, and she attended college at the University of Illinois, where she met her first husband, William Hatchard. Marge completed her bachelor's degree in May 1944 and was married a week later. Marge and Bill spent the World War II years in Cambridge, Massachusetts, where they began attending the Unitarian Church, an important religious choice for Marge. At the end of the war, they moved to Wilmington. Bill and Marge had three children together, Janet, Marnie, and Julie, whom they raised in the church. Marge was an excellent, if sometimes reluctant, homemaker and mother. She sometimes talked with friends about an intention of writing a book about raising children, and she said she'd call that book Burnt Toast. But Marge loved her three daughters very, very much. I'm told that Marge was a good cook. Her daughter Janet has a memory of her mom making her jam and jelly in the little house from the grapes in the grape arbor that she says she and my father had planted while he was painting outside the window. Marge skillfully sewed not just the children's clothes, but also made suits and coats and other complicated things. Even as she was in her final weeks and confined to bed, her daughters found Marge mending a hole in her blanket, having, at the age of 96, the eyes and steady enough hands to thread the needle and stitch the hole closed by herself. Of course, good eyes and steady hands weren't the biggest factor. I suspect that even more pressing for Marge was her fierce independence and not wanting to be a burden on others by asking them to sew the blanket. Marge was thrifty and not someone who would waste anything, whether it was a milk bottle lid or aluminum foil or Ziploc bag. Everything could be washed and reused or repurposed. Celery and carrot ends were saved to make broth. You even save the things whose future purpose is not yet clear, just in case someone might need it. Her grandchildren have stories of being the recipients of such saved from the trash items, and say they sometimes find themselves following those same habits. Out in the community, Marge was an active volunteer, serving on many committees and boards. After she and Bill divorced, she began her professional career in social services. She became the education director of the Mental Health Association and worked for the state's Division of Social Services, eventually becoming the director of volunteer services for the state of Delaware. In 1972, she married Henry Meyermann, or Hank, a musician and piano technician. Through their long and happy marriage, Marge was able to feed her love of music, attending classical concerts and listening to Hank play. Today we are joined by singer Martin Hargrove, whose beautiful voice Marge has long loved. We are also joined by organist Paul Fleckenstein, playing our church's Reiger Tracker organ. When the organ was being installed, it required 3 builders to reassemble it when it arrived from Austria. Marge and Hank hosted the 3 organ builders, an Austrian, German, and Englishman, for the 2 months that they were here assembling the organ. And Marge said church members stood in line to invite them to dinner. What a tremendous experience it was. Marge is best known for creating the Adopt a Family program, which she began in 1974 and directed statewide for 22 years. Marge's friend and fellow member of First Unitarian Church, Jackie Feldman, recalls someone telling Jackie, "Hey, I know someone who's starting a program, Adopt a Family, and she needs help." Jackie, an ever-willing volunteer herself, showed up to a gymnasium that was packed out with clothes and different housewares and packages. And there was, she says, this dynamic little woman running around making things happen. Marge asked Jackie, "What can you do?" And Jackie, clear that she was in the presence of a true leader, responded, "Whatever you need." Jackie remembers Marge as loving and sweet, and also a powerhouse, a perfect combination, I'd say, for leading volunteers. Marge was widely recognized for her leadership and her contributions. She received the Wilmington News Journal's Hometown Hero Award and the state's Jefferson Award. She received a Lifetime Achievement Award from Governor Tom Carper. She received the Clara Barton Sisterhood Award, which honors women for their contributions to their congregations and their communities. During her various projects, one of them was developing and coordinating the Warehouse Project, which was run by First Unitarian volunteers from 1990 to 2003. And it supplied free building materials to low-income people and community agencies. Again, this is Marge finding ways to encourage people not to throw out older materials or used materials, but to help find homes for them, for people in the community who most need them. She also coordinated a bed program for people needing beds and cribs. Marge retired from the state at the age of 72 to create New Pathways, a nonprofit agency which supported low-income, often abused mothers. And then Marge retired for real at the age of 79. Marge was an active member of the First Unitarian Church of Wilmington for 73 years. She would talk about the early days of her participation in the church back when it was a building on 8th and West Streets downtown, and back where women wore white gloves and hats to church. When I last spoke with her, she talked about being on the board the year the congregation made the choice to relocate to Sharpley off of Concord Pike. Marge taught Sunday school for 10 years, which included the years of 2-hour church school. Of her early arrival in the church, Marge wrote, "As a recent college graduate with a degree in child development, I volunteered in the nursery. Very quickly, I was put in charge of the 3s and 4s. I thought the Beacon Press curriculum, the Martin and Judy series, were incredibly dull in spite of their noble content. I agreed to teach if I could use my own materials. Bill Davis, Kathy Thomas's father, chaired the RE committee and took my request to the board. I was granted permission, and that was my first church lesson in bringing about change rather than complaining." Over the years, Marge served on every church committee, including twice on the board. She served on the building committee and a ministerial search committee. She hosted a bi-monthly church caregivers group for many years and served on the pastoral care team. Marge's absence will be deeply felt in this congregation, not just for her longevity in the congregation, but the many friendships she cultivated over the years and all the many, many people that she inspired here. When she received the Hometown Hero Award, she said she didn't think of herself as a hero. She said, "I just sort of do my thing." She also recognized how that spirit of volunteerism and community involvement has been part of her whole life. Of her valedictorian speech at the age of 16, she later said, "I talked about being a friend to man." That was the theme of the valedictory. I said we have to understand ourselves, accept responsibility, and have an informed conscience. She said, "It's amazing how consistent the thought is with the way I feel now." She also said of her work, "I think it's fortunate that I found a spot where I can make a good contribution. I think volunteering is something everybody needs to do. It's like gift giving. Some people feel the need more than others. It brings out the best in people." In a newsletter to fellow volunteers, Marge described volunteering in this way. She said, "If we remain unmoved, untouched by the suffering and deprivation around us, the potential goodness in us would die, and we too would be impoverished." Her children and grandchildren can attest to this spirit, which they observed as they were each dragged into various volunteer jobs, whether to an office or a warehouse or running errands or visiting elderly folks in need of company. Marge made sure that that volunteer spirit was passed along to each generation. In fact, if you want to observe the mark that Marge Meyermann made on this world, I do not think that it's embodied in awards or community organizations she started, or even the great many numbers of people served by her hard work and leadership, as much as it is observed so keenly and so profoundly in the love of her grandchildren. I've heard from different grandparents at different stages of their grandparenting that what prepared them for the role of grandparent was not so much that they were the perfect parent to their children, but that they had a willingness to learn from the mistakes that they made in parenting and raising their own children. And so vowing that with their grandchildren, they would be a little more patient, a little more playful, gentler, more available, more generous, more trusting. Thankfully for Marge, that was her experience. She loved those grandchildren with a very full heart. Marge once told me that she has boxes of dress-up clothes for her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. I asked her what her grandmother was like, and she said that her grandmother used to keep a drawer in the kitchen with toys in it for Marge. And some 90 years later, Marge still lit up as she remembered that drawer with those toys in it. Marge, or Dobby, as she was known to her family, was the kind of grandmother who would sneak her grandchildren candy and allow all kinds of antics in the house. There's a family story about the time Dobby let the grandchildren take all the blankets and sheets in the house and tie them all together in one giant string of blankets and sheets, which they then strung throughout the house, going down the laundry chute, back upstairs, and in and out of various rooms and windows. Dobby told her children and grandchildren elaborate stories, too, of the 3 fairies that lived in her yard. She served up fairy pancakes, which are the little drops of pancakes that sometimes cook, that land on the griddle when you're making pancakes. But if you're Dobby, you can make a whole griddle of them and help the fairies and the grandchildren feel especially welcome by serving up those fairy pancakes. She remembered every birthday and every anniversary of every child, grandchild, and great-grandchild and sent them cards in the mail. She followed their personalities and interests, and she'd clip articles that she thought they might find interesting and send them along. The family talked with me about how central Dobby's house has always been. Anya said that she moved around a lot, and Dobby's house was the house where things didn't change. Everyone gathered at Dobby's house to see one another and gathered there for the holidays. Anya added, I didn't see certain members of the family unless it was at Dobby's house. And Dobby was the hub in other ways. She'd go through the Rolodex of family members and let you know how they were doing and give you the update, the good and the bad. Catherine remembers, too, Dobby's playfulness in animal impressions, pigs, cows, whatever, at the dinner table, which I later came to understand were quite legendary, all the animal impressions that she could do. Lisa remembers that Dobby helped her see her strengths, even when she couldn't see them herself. Jamie remembers Dobby's hands, and when she wraps a present now, she can see Dobby's hands tying the ribbon. Mira remembers trying to keep up with Dobby as she walked through the Concord Mall. Shelley remembers Dobby's outward focus and said when she starts to think too much inward, she thinks of Dobby. What would Dobby do? How would Dobby see this? Amy remembers going around town and everyone knowing Dobby, which gave Amy a sense of what it looks like for a woman to be powerful in the workplace. She got to see Dobby as a role model. Dobby was a good listener. She had a big heart. When Julie and Ryan's daughter, Allison, was dying, they were both deeply moved by Dobby's presence with them in Michigan. And what a good mother and grandmother she was in such a heart-wrenching time. Marnie's spouse, Brian, talked about how Dobby never missed a beat in accepting him fully. Marjorie Meyermann, Dobby, has been described as a true matriarch, generous, energetic, a force, powerful, principled, fair, committed to justice, goofy, resourceful, resilient, home base, tenacious, compassionate, a mentor, frugal, loving, fierce, efficient, no nonsense, political, wasn't a musician, but loved music, a feminist, someone ahead of her time. You'd almost think of Marge as perfect. But the truth is, no one's life is easy, and even our heroes struggle. A quote keeps popping up in different forms all over Dobby's house. It's this excerpt from a 1970 meditation book that says this: "Normal day, let me be aware of the treasure you are. Let me learn from you, love you, savor you, bless you before you depart. Let me not pass you by in quest of some rare and perfect tomorrow. Let me hold you while I may, for it will not always be so. One day I shall dig my nails into the earth or bury my face into a pillow or stretch myself taut or raise my hands to the sky and want more than all the world your return. Marge's family asks that I share that just like many people, Marge had her harder times. There were years when she struggled with a driving depression. She had bouts of anger and bouts of hopelessness that nearly took her life. Much of it was during a time when there weren't medications that she could go on or support systems for her to access. There's a quote that Marge said has been important to her for years. It's by Albert Camus, who wrote, "In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer." In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. That quote seemed to be a touchstone for her, and perhaps it helped pull her through and find her strength. I've been particularly moved by the openness of some of her grandchildren who knew that their Dobby pulled through really hard stuff and with less resources and support than they have. And they report that just knowing that, just knowing something of her story helps them pull through the harder parts of their lives. It is as if Dobby's journey itself has become a touchstone for her grandchildren, who are finding creative ways to radiate, to love, to be playful, and to draw close to one another despite hardship. What a gift. Dobby would be so proud. On May 7th, 2020, Marjorie Meyermann, whose resilience, generous heart, and playfulness brightened our world, died at home in the care and presence of her beloved family. Marge was preceded in death by her parents, one brother, her husband Hank, two stepsons, Ted and Jay Meyermann, and one granddaughter, Allison. Her daughters, she is survived by her older brother, Lumen Colton of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, her daughters Janet and husband Bob Saltzman of Wilmington, Marnie and husband Brian Singer of Fremont, California, and Julie and husband Ryan Dibdahl of Ann Arbor, Michigan, and her daughter-in-law Darlene Meyermann of Lebanon, Ohio. Dobby also leaves behind 8 surviving grandchildren and 15 great-grandchildren. Her grandchildren have agreed to share their remembrances with us today.
We are Dobby's 8 living grandchildren, and we are blessed to be hers. In honor of the consistent love, attention, and generosity she's shown us, we want to share some of what comes to mind when we think of her.
Like trying to keep up with her fast steps through the long hallways of the community center where Adopt-A-Family was taking over.
Trying to keep up with her walking really anywhere, especially at Christmas.
Sense of humor, sneaking a chocolate or making piggy noises on the side during a boring adult conversation.
Her hands, beautifully filed at stoplights, cemented in our memories from her teaching us how to cook, sew, knit, puzzle, garden.
She could fix anything. Sew on buttons, fix zippers, get out stains, sew up holes, make tears stop.
Her product of the Depression saving, repurposing, and maintenance.
Making soup after Thanksgiving dinner from the turkey carcass, after picking the entire carcass completely clean, and even stealing uneaten turkey from plates, lest we should miss a piece of good turkey. Get out of the kitchen!
Pig, fish, chimpanzee, and old lady without any teeth impressions.
Flower gardens and flower arrangements.
Birthday and anniversary cards with generous checks.
The unmistakable scent of her house.
Warm hugs and climbing up to snuggle between her and Hank.
The hammock, the picnic table, the tablecloths. A guarantee of ice cream in the freezer.
That same high chair and crib that we all used.
A robust social schedule up until the end.
Hank and Dolores and Madeline and Dale and Helena and the many, many friends and relationships.
The manual coffee grinder.
Dobby hollering, Hank, from all places of the house. Dobby trying desperately to make me like salads, and me feeding salad pieces to the Pachysandra.
Recipes, mac and cheese, chocolate cake, sugar cookies, Thanksgiving stuffing.
Dobby putting on lipstick with a little lip brush.
Dropping sheets down the laundry chute with a whoosh.
And the sheets landing on my head in the basement.
Her ability to look impeccably dressed, even when wearing a t-shirt, which was probably ironed.
Old-fashioned words like nighty and dighty rather than nightgown and diaper.
Having her say hello to half the people we saw going anywhere because she pretty much knew half of Delaware.
The tinkle of the little bell on the garage doorknob to the house, announcing someone's entrance.
Big red gum. And learning that spice-flavored gumdrops really are better than the fruit ones.
The green and white Tic Tacs at the bottom of her purse or stashed in the kitchen's not junk drawer.
The wobble of all the china as you walked through the dining room, so you tried to tiptoe.
The creak of the hallway upstairs.
The ancient nativity she'd set out on the dining room hutch, even though she was decidedly not Christian.
Her powers to always know if there was something going on in your life, even if you weren't sharing it.
Homemade pizza, which was a frozen pizza dressed up with veggies next to cheese, and her fruit pizza, which was a huge sugar cookie with cream cheese and fruit toppings for dessert.
Little tips about little things: healthy eating, cleaning, ironing, laundry, pronunciation, and grammar, like the terrible tiger. Sending kids through the buffet first, but then making them wait forever to eat until everyone else was served.
The ability to corral wild kids, even in her 90s, with stories, puzzles, games, and intense interest in anything they said.
If you needed it, whatever it was, she had it in a drawer, closet, box, attic, pantry, or freezer.
Blueberry pancakes with blueberry syrup made from the frozen backstock in her basement.
Mattress slides down the stairs.
Popcorn by the fire.
Roasting marshmallows.
Collecting cicada shells by the bucket load.
Hammock adventures.
Bench swing forts.
The annual spreading of the mulch.
Save it. The kids might want to play with it.
Warm milk and ginger snaps, which was her last meal.
Apricots.
Curling her hair into little sausages and us blow drying our hair at the top of the stairs.
Nightgown slumber parties.
Classical music and Peter and the Wolf on the record player.
Puzzles.
Her love of cats. There was Ollie and Suki, Whiskers, Big Honey, Phoebe, of course, who only liked Dobby and would draw blood from anyone else, and Zoltan.
Dress-ups, dress-ups, dress-ups.
Family gatherings and the obligatory kids' performances.
Neighborhood walks in a wheelbarrow.
Samantha!
Yard sale excursions.
Fairy stories with Mr. Cardinal.
Chris and Beth, Grover and Clover, jump right up and fly right over.
Secret stashes of candy in the pantry. Secret stashes of candy in the freezer.
Berry pancakes with crispy buttery edges.
Spider plants and succulents.
Takeout of subs and Ritas and greasy Chinese food.
Going to the beach.
Coffee crumble coffee cake.
Oyster crackers.
Gin and tonics. Just one at 5.
The angel tree at Christmas.
Adopt a family.
Dobby and Hank standing at the front door as you were driving away with arms around each other and hands waving.
Family.
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 Family. Family.
Family.
I share a poem today called Rose Petals. It was written by Marge's father, Luman Wesley Colton, who I'm told was a humble man who typed poetry in the basement. Here is that poem, Rose Petals. I saw rose petals lying on the ground, like fragments of glass, and yet unlike. They still were beautiful, so soft, so fair. They were still fragrant on the evening air. And in these last few hours, when they pass from bloom to mold to softly clinging dust, a final message came for us to read. Beauty is never wasted. Dust or seed renews its life or other life some way, bequeaths its fragrance to another day. In our Unitarian Universalist faith, we have diverse beliefs about what happens to people after they die. Some of us believe in heaven, some of us believe in reincarnation, some of us simply believe that the curtain just sort of falls and our consciousness ends. Marge's family imagines that wherever Marge is, she is certainly organizing volunteers there. And one thing we know for sure is that wherever she is, there is a spirit of love. In that loving spirit, please join me in a moment of prayer. Spirit of life, we are so grateful for the life of Marjorie Meyermann. We give thanks for every day that Marge lived, for every birthday card she sent, for every fairy pancake that she flipped. We give thanks for her ability to be the graceful, loving, and firm matriarch of her family for so many years. And we are grateful that she was able to pull through the harder years and find something of freedom and love in this life. We give thanks for her force and power that helped her to achieve success in her education, in her career, and in community building. For all the many ways her hard work and leadership made the lives of other people more stable, fuller, and healthier. We are grateful for her humor, for her driving resourcefulness, for her listening ear, her good advice, her quest to learn and grow, and for the family she created, the lasting relationship she got to nurture with Hank, and all the friends she made throughout her 96 years on this earth. Spirit of love, assure Dobby of a life well lived. Help her to let go of any regrets, any unfinished business, or unspoken words. Assure her that family and friends are better for having known her, and bring Dobby into the deep peace of love. And may each person who knew Dobby let go of their own regrets, their own unspoken words or unfinished business. May we mourn well so that we can continue to keep Marge alive, not through sadness and regret, but by living out that same commitment to community service, that same joy for music, that love of children, that determined force for justice that were markers of Marge's life. May it be so. We are sending you light to hold you, to heal you. We are sending you light to hold you in love. We are sending you light to hold
Okay.
Okay. Marge's family has invited me to share this reading called Epitaph by Merritt Malloy and adapted by Marnie Singer. When I die, give what's left of me away. If you need to weep, cry for someone walking the street beside you. And when you need me, put your arms around anyone and give them what you need to give me. I want to leave you something better than words or sounds. Look for me in the people I've known or loved. And if you cannot give me away, at least let me live in your eyes and not in your mind. You can love me best by letting hands touch hands. Love doesn't die. People do. So when all that's left of me is love, give me away. A life well lived involves giving and receiving love. We acknowledge that with Dobby, Marge, we have given and received countless times and in countless ways. We symbolize these gifts in two ways. First, the family has donated a young dogwood tree that will bloom in Marge's favorite color, pink. That tree will be planted on our First Unitarian Church property for all to enjoy, and also to help us remember how much she herself was inspired by nature. Secondly, we have been gifted several boxes of Marge's books to give away. Next Sunday, May 31st, weather permitting, between noon and 2 o'clock, those of you who are nearby are invited to come over to the parking lot at First Unitarian Church of Wilmington and pick up a book from Marge's vast collection. She was an avid reader and also someone who would not want things to go to waste. And I suspect some of you are at home itching for a new book. Some of the books even include beautiful notes made by Marge. If you're fortunate enough to get a copy of her cookbook, Tofu Goes West, you'll get her changes to a couple of recipes written in the margins, in addition to notations about which were her favorite recipes and when she made them. To maintain safe practices during that time, you won't be able to touch all the books except the one you're taking home, and we ask that you maintain social distancing and wear a mask for that. But I do hope that you'll come by on next Sunday, May 31st, between noon and 2, and pick up one of Marge's books. For those of you who are online using the Zoom platform today, after our postlude, you are welcome to unmute and greet one another. You may also use the chat box to write messages to Marge's family and to share your own thoughts and memories of Marge. And now, as Helena extinguishes our chalice, we remember that a light never truly goes out. It is carried forth by all who have witnessed its radiance, its passion, and its warmth. And so, when you wish to keep something of Marge's spirit alive, I invite you to surprise a loved one with a card in the mail. Listen deeply to one another. Tell someone about the fairies who live in your yard. Be playful. Find ways to support the most disenfranchised people. Put your money, put your time where your mouth is. Draw people together. Spend time in nature. Pick yourself up after your hardest falls. And most of all, Give and receive love with a generous heart. May you find healing in your grief and deep peace in your soul for all your days. Our final song is a piece by Bach that Marge selected herself for us to listen to today. She would be delighted that it is being played on the First Unitarian Church organ and sung by Martin Hargrove.